Ballarat, Victoria, Australia, 1851. Gold was being discovered, and between 1852 and 1853 around 40,000 people arrived in just 1 year. In 1856, 94,982 kilos of gold were extracted, and in total, between 1851 and 1896, the Victoria Mines Department recorded a total of 1.89 million kilos of gold mined in Victoria. Licences were needed and checked by a special goldfields police. If a licence wasn't produced, they were fined and locked up. Some police were bribed. The miners hated them, but in reality, they worked to support themselves and families to buy food, tents, and working tools. Governments in Sydney and Melbourne imposed the licence fees to dig for gold in an area of just 8 square feet, or about 2.4 metres. This also enabled the government to keep track of migration numbers to the goldfields and also pay for road upgrades, administration costs, and police services. The gold licence was required to be paid whether gold was found or not, and the miners felt this was unreasonable, expensive, and unfair when they were not represented by the government. The miners didn't own the land, nor did they have the right to vote, so as fees rose and more policing methods came into play, commissioners assisted the police and treated miners with cruelty, and some were beaten until unconscious with riding crops. For the average miner, the monthly fee of £1 for the licence imposed financial hardship, considering the long hours spent looking for the gold, mostly without any success. The others could just simply not afford one. Due to the shortage of regular officers, pensioners were employed. These were military men who had retired from active service and recruited to help the police. In October 1854, an argument broke out at Bentley's Hotel, and a man named James Scobie was killed, and the inquest found no evidence to suggest the hotel's publican James Bentley took place in the matter. At the time, Johannes Gregorius was prosecuted for the murder, and by the 15th of October, a mass meeting of Catholic miners took place on Bakers Hill, protesting the treatment of Gregorius, but only 2 days later, as a response to the acquittal, approximately 10,000 men held a protest near the Eureka Hotel. On November the 29th, 1854, a mass meeting of 12,000 people took place in Ballarat, and lay law was there to address the meeting, and also to move motions that have passed. The Reform League was elected to elect the Central Committee as a insurgent flag was hoisted that represented the Southern Cross, a constellation on a dark blue background. The Eureka flag was sewn together by 3 women, made from silk, and first hoisted at Bakers Hill in 1854. At that moment, the oath of allegiance was spoken. We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly to each other and to fight and defend our rights and liberties. During the protest, the hotel was set alight, and due to the lack of security and armed forces, authorities were unable to restore order. Although Andrew McIntyre and Thomas Fletcher were arrested and convicted for the arson attack on the Eureka Hotel. During the following weeks, the League set out to negotiate matters relating to the burning of the hotel and the death of James Scobie, but also more relevant issues like the abolition of the licence, the disbanding of the Gold Commission, and the democratic representation of the goldfields. By the 19th of October, police reinforcements had arrived in Ballarat from the 40th Regiment, 87 men from infantry and 30 mounted police, and then on the 28th of November a further 65 infantry and 70 mounted from the 12th Regiment of East Suffolk. On the early hours of Sunday morning, on December the 3rd, 1854, the stockade made from logs and trees was erected by the diggers. But unfortunately, being a Sunday, the miners didn't expect an attack and were met by a large force of heavily armed soldiers and police. The diggers were outnumbered and anxious to escape the violence and harassment for producing these gold licences, and being ill-prepared, 22 diggers and 5 troopers lost their lives that day. After the battle at the Eureka Stockade, 120 people were detained. 13 were put on trial for high treason, and the related matters were decided by jurors handpicked by the general public. On March the 27th, the last 5 people were put on trial after legal proceedings had become weary, dull, and unprofitable. The leaders were then arrested and put on trial. Most thought they had the right to protest about unjust laws, and by the end of the trial they were found not guilty. The leader of the miners' uprising at the Eureka in 1854 was led by Peter Lalor, who later became the politician and former Speaker of the Victorian Legislative Assembly. Local newspapers characterised the actions as a brutal overuse of force, basically by actions of government officials, and letters patent formally appointing the members of the Royal Commission was signed and sealed on December 7th, 1854. The Goldfields Gold Commissioner, Robert Reid, stated, "The licence is a mere cloak to cover the democratic revolution." After the rebellion, Reid went on to become a politician, commander of the Geelong Rifle Corps, and also the sheriff on trial of Ned Kelly as a witness to his execution in 1880. Reid retired in December of 1889. Memorials were erected in Ballarat Cemetery to commemorate the diggers and soldiers in the 40th and 12th Regiments who died at the Eureka Stockade on December 3rd, 1854. The battle became legendary in Australian history and a defining moment from the injustice of the gold licence fees and the administration system imposing on the population of the goldfields by the government.